Everything you think you know about anxiety is probably wrong, not because you are uninformed, not because you have not tried to understand it, but because the thing itself has been whispering lies to you for so long that its voice sounds exactly like your own. And that is what makes it so dangerous. It does not announce itself like sadness does. It does not crash through the door like anger. It does not even feel like something separate from you. It sits quietly beside you, wearing your face, speaking in your tone, borrowing your vocabulary, and convincing you that every worst-case scenario it invents is simply you being realistic, simply you being prepared, simply you being smart enough to see what everyone else misses. But it is not you. It never was. And by the time we reach the end of this conversation, you are going to see it for what it truly is. Not a monster, not a disease, not a life sentence, but a signal, a deeply misunderstood signal that has been trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. But here is what most people never hear. And it might be the most important thing anyone ever tells you about anxiety. You do not need to destroy it to be free from it. You do not need to fight it, medicate it into silence, or pretend it does not exist. What you need, and what almost no one teaches you, is how to read it, how to decode the message it has been screaming at you your entire life. And once you learn that, something shifts. Not overnight, not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but slowly. Gently. The way morning light fills a room you forgot had windows. Stay until the end, because the shift I am going to share with you is not the kind you will find in a textbook. It is the kind that changes the way you wake up in the morning. Before we can talk about mastering anxiety, we need to understand where it actually comes from. Not the surface level explanation, not the one that says you are just stressed or overwhelmed or need to relax. The real one, the one that lives beneath everything. Anxiety, at its core, is not a malfunction. It is one of the oldest systems in the human brain. Long before we had language or cities or smartphones, we had fear. And fear kept us alive. It told us when a predator was near. It made us run before we even had time to think. It sharpened our senses in moments of danger so we could survive just one more day. That system, that ancient alarm, still lives inside you. Every single part of it. The racing heart, the shallow breath, the tight stomach, the restless thoughts that will not stop circling. All of it was designed for a world that no longer exists. A world where the threats were physical, immediate, life or death. But your brain does not know that. It cannot tell the difference between a lion in the grass and a Monday morning meeting. It cannot distinguish between a genuine emergency and the thought of an awkward conversation you might have next week. To your brain, a threat is a threat, and it responds the same way every time. Full alarm, full volume, no nuance. And this is where things start to get complicated. Because in today's world, the threats are not physical. They are emotional, social, psychological. They are the fear of being judged, the fear of not being enough, the fear of saying the wrong thing, or starting the wrong path, or loving the wrong person. And these fears do not come and go in 5 minutes the way a physical threat does. They linger, they loop, they replay themselves at 2 a.m. when the house is quiet and there is nothing left to distract you from the sound of your own mind. Consider a composite example based on observed patterns. Imagine a person who, by all external measures, is doing fine. They have a job. They have people who care about them. They have a roof over their head and food on the table. From the outside, their life looks stable, comfortable even. But every single morning, before their feet even touch the floor, Something tightens inside their chest. It is not pain exactly. It is more like pressure, like something heavy is sitting on their ribs, like the air in the room got thicker without anyone noticing, and their mind, without being asked, without permission, begins to run through everything that could go wrong today. The email they forgot to send, the look their coworker gave them yesterday that might have meant something or might have meant nothing, the conversation they have been avoiding for weeks, the future they cannot control no matter how hard they try. None of these things are happening right now, not a single one. But to their brain, they might as well be. Because the alarm system does not care about timelines. It does not care about what is real and what is imagined. It only cares about possibilities. And for a brain that is wired to protect, every possibility, no matter how unlikely, is treated as a genuine threat. This is what anxiety does. It takes the extraordinary power of human imagination, the same power that lets us write music and build bridges and dream about the stars, and it turns it against us. It uses our ability to think ahead, not to plan, but to panic, not to prepare, but to paralyze. And the cruelest part is that it feels productive. It feels like you are solving a problem. It feels like if you just think about it, a little more, a little harder, a little longer, you will finally find the answer that makes the fear go away. But you will not, because anxiety is not a problem to be solved. It is a pattern to be understood. Think of it this way. Imagine you live in a house with a fire alarm, and that alarm is incredibly sensitive, more sensitive than any alarm you have ever encountered. So sensitive that it goes off every time you make toast, every time you light a candle, every time steam rises from a hot shower, every time someone opens the oven door. Now, the alarm is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is detecting something in the air that could, in theory, be a fire. But it is not a fire. It is just toast. It is just steam. It is just the ordinary heat of living. The question is not how to destroy the alarm. You need the alarm. If there ever is a real fire, you want it working. The question is how to recognize that the alarm is reacting to something that is not actually dangerous. And once you recognize that, you do not have to stand in the kitchen with your heart pounding every time you hear the beep. You can acknowledge it. You can take a breath. And you can say, quietly and firmly, I hear you, but I am safe. That is the first step in understanding anxiety. Recognizing that the alarm is not the enemy. The alarm is just doing its job. The problem is that its job was designed for a different world. And in this world, most of the things it warns you about are not fires. They are toast. But knowing this does not make the feeling go away. And this is where most advice falls short. People will tell you to just breathe, to think positive, to stop worrying. As if you had not already tried all of that 1,000 times. As if the solution to a racing mind is simply to tell it to be quiet. That is like telling the ocean to stop making waves. The waves are not the problem. The wind is. And if you want to calm the water, you have to understand the wind. So let us talk about the wind, the invisible force behind your anxiety. For most people, that force is not a single event or a single fear. It is not something you can point to and say, there, that is the reason. It is something much deeper and much quieter than that. It is a belief, a quiet, often unconscious belief about who they are and what they deserve. Maybe it is the belief that they are not smart enough, or strong enough, or worthy enough. Maybe it is the belief that love is conditional, that safety is always temporary, that good things always come attached to a price you will have to pay later. These beliefs do not form overnight. They are not the result of one bad day or one painful moment. They are built slowly, over years, through experiences that may not even seem significant at the time. A dismissive comment from a parent that landed harder than they realized. A moment of rejection in childhood that was never talked about. A pattern of being told, in subtle and not so subtle ways, that who you are is not quite right, that you need to be different, that you need to be more or less of something in order to earn the love and belonging that should have been yours from the beginning. And over time, these experiences do not just create memories. They create a lens, a filter through which everything is seen. And when you look at the world through a lens of unworthiness, everything becomes a potential confirmation of that belief. A friend who does not text back becomes evidence that you are forgettable. A project that does not go well becomes proof that you are incompetent. A moment of silence in a conversation becomes a sign that you have said something wrong. Anxiety is not random. It is loyal. It is loyal to the story you have been told about yourself, even when that story is not true. And this is the part that hurts the most, because the story often starts before you are old enough to question it. It is handed to you by the people and the circumstances around you, and you carry it forward as if it were your own, as if you chose it. But you did not. And here is where the shift begins. Mastering anxiety does not mean silencing it. It does not mean becoming someone who never worries or never feels afraid. That person does not exist. And if they did, they would not be someone worth admiring. They would be someone disconnected from the world around them. That is not mastery. That is numbness. And numbness is just another form of hiding. True mastery is about something far more nuanced and far more powerful. It is about changing your relationship with the alarm. It is about learning to hear it without obeying it. To feel the fear without letting it make your decisions for you. To sit in the discomfort without running from it or drowning in it. To let the wave come and to let it pass without losing yourself in it. There is a concept that researchers have explored for years. It is the idea that the brain can actually rewire itself based on experience. The pathways that fire together grow stronger together, and the pathways that stop being used grow weaker over time. This means that the anxious patterns in your brain are not permanent. They are practiced. They are strong because they have been repeated thousands of times. But they can be weakened, not by force, not by suppression, but by gently, consistently, choosing a different response. Every time the alarm goes off and you pause instead of panicking, you are building a new pathway. Every time you feel the urge to spiral and you choose to ground yourself in the present moment instead, to notice your feet on the floor, the temperature of the air, the sound of your own breathing, you are rewiring a small piece of your brain. Every time you catch the voice that says, "You are not enough," and you respond calmly and clearly, that is a thought, not a fact. You are loosening the grip of a story that was never yours to begin with. This is not positive thinking. This is not pretending everything is fine when it is not. This is the slow, patient, sometimes painful work of teaching your nervous system that it is safe, that you are safe, even when everything inside you is screaming that you are not. Even when your palms are sweating and your heart is racing and every cell in your body is telling you to run. And here is what no one tells you about this process. It does not feel powerful while you are doing it. It does not feel like mastery. It feels like sitting with something that hurts and choosing not to run. It feels like breathing through a wave of panic and noticing, quietly, that you are still here when it passes. It feels like the smallest, most unremarkable thing in the world. But it is not small. It is enormous. Because every time you survive a moment your anxiety told you that you could not, you prove something to yourself that no amount of logic or reassurance ever could. You prove that you are stronger than the alarm. Consider another composite illustration. A person who spent years avoiding situations that triggered their anxiety. They stopped going to gatherings. They stopped raising their hand at work. They stopped reaching out to people they cared about. They built their entire life around the single goal of never triggering the alarm. And in doing so, they made their world smaller and smaller and smaller, until the only place that felt safe was a room with the door closed and the lights off. Not because they did not want to, but because the alarm was so loud and so convincing that the only option that felt safe was retreat. Every step away from the world felt like relief, but it was not relief. It was surrender. And then one day, they decided to try something different. Not something big, not something heroic, something small. They went to a gathering and stayed for 15 minutes. Their heart was pounding the entire time. Their palms were wet. Their mind was running through every possible way this could go wrong. But they stayed. And when they left, nothing terrible had happened. The world had not ended. No one had judged them. And for the first time in years, they felt something they had almost forgotten. They felt capable. Not confident. Not fearless. Just capable. Like maybe, just maybe, the alarm had been lying to them all along. That is the moment. That quiet, unglamorous, barely noticeable moment is where mastery begins. Not on a mountaintop, not in a therapist's office, not in a book or a video or a quote on the internet. It begins in the ordinary, trembling, deeply human act of doing something that scares you and discovering that you can survive it. And if you pull back even further, something even more beautiful comes into focus. Something that anxiety has been hiding from you this entire time. Anxiety, for all its cruelty, for all the nights it stole from you and the moments it ruined, is evidence of something remarkable about you. It is evidence that you care, deeply, fiercely, about your life, about your relationships, about the future, about doing things well, about being a good person in a complicated world. People who do not care do not worry. People who are disconnected from the world do not lose sleep over it. Your anxiety, in its own painful and exhausting way, is proof that you are paying attention, that you are engaged with your own existence, that somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the noise, beneath the racing thoughts and the tight chest and the sleepless nights, there is a person who wants so desperately for things to be okay that their brain works overtime trying to make sure of it. That is not a flaw. That is not a weakness. That is the most human thing there is. The goal is not to become someone who never feels anxious. The goal is to become someone who feels anxious and moves anyway. Someone who hears the alarm and checks for fire, but does not burn down the house in a panic. Someone who holds fear in one hand and purpose in the other, and chooses again and again to walk forward. Not because they are brave, but because they finally understand that standing still was never the safer option. It just felt that way. And that understanding, once it settles into your bones, changes everything. Not by erasing the anxiety, not by making you fearless or bulletproof or above it all, but by giving it a new role. It stops being the thing that controls your life and starts being the thing that reminds you how much your life means to you. It stops being a wall and starts being a compass, pointing you always toward the things that matter most. Because the things we are most anxious about are, Almost always the things we care about the most, the relationship we are afraid to lose, the dream we are afraid to chase, the version of ourselves we are afraid to become. And caring about those things, despite the cost, despite the discomfort, despite the sleepless nights and the racing thoughts and the tightness in your chest, caring is what makes this whole experience worth it. Caring is not the problem. Caring is the point. So the next time anxiety shows up, and it will, do not try to slam the door on it. Do not pretend it is not there. And do not let it sit in the driver's seat. Instead, look at it, really look at it, and say, I know what you are. I know why you are here, and I am going to be okay. Not because you have all the answers, not because the fear has gone away, but because you have finally learned the one thing anxiety never wanted you to know. You were always strong enough to carry it. You just did not believe it yet. If something in this conversation touched a part of you that you do not usually share with the world, I want you to know that this is only the beginning. There are deeper layers to explore, quieter truths waiting beneath the surface of everything you have been carrying. If you would like to continue this journey, consider subscribing so we can keep walking this path together. Not because something is wrong with you, but because understanding yourself is one of the most meaningful things you will ever do, and you do not have to do it alone.